Hi, everybody. Erica from In the Company of Cards back twice in one day. And as promised, I have Dr. Lena Rodriguez here with me. I know tons of you know who she is and you know her work and you love her commentary and her snark and her kind reassurance to us who are going through what we're going through. But as I mentioned, I don't think I mentioned it. Well, I guess I did mention it. I said that you were going to be a regular. We were going to do this once a
Yeah, yeah,
and I think it'll be terrific. We will, sometimes we'll know in advance what we want to talk about. Sometimes we won't. Feel free to put comments in if there are things that you'd like us to look at, and we will entertain that. But it'll be a once a month thing since you can't get enough of either one of us. So we thought we'd come together and do this. So hi, Dr. Lena. So great to have you back.
Hi, and it's so good to have a grown-up gals discussion here, and
Exactly.
it's fun.
Exactly. My viewers loved our last conversations. We've done a couple so far. And I think that it's helpful for people to hear intelligent conversation, sometimes just so it can be modeled for how to do it. You know what I'm saying? Uh,
Yes,
I did also have people who have said, so we can think about this at some point, um, that they wish they could be in on the conversation.
hmm,
Oh, there might be a way where we can do a live,
yeah,
and just do what we're doing here, but we will, watch the feed and
yeah.
then answer questions as they come up. So we'll think about
We'll
that.
see if we can manage that.
I know
So,
it's a little technologically overwhelming for two old ladies like us, but we'll figure it out. That might be a fun thing to do at some point.
yeah.
So today,
Mm.
there's so much to talk about. Um, and we talked a little bit for like a couple of minutes before I hit the record button here. And I said to Dr. Lena that I'm finding these days not easy, and for a lot of reasons. But one of them is, do you remember where was it in South America where they had the disappeared, like desaparecido,
Argentina was
Argentina,
one.
right?
Chile also had it, but
Yes, yes.
the
The
one we
mothers.
remember from the
Yes, in
70s
the
as a
70s. So we're
phenomenon.
both old enough to remember this, that there would be mothers who would gather, at the police stations and at the courts and all of that, because they were looking for their children who had been disappeared. And prior to this, this is not how you would use the word. Um, that verb. You could disappear, but
Mm,
this passive thing of being disappeared, that
yes.
initially came up with in the 70s with that. And so one of the things that I am noticing, I hope everybody else is noticing it too, is the fact that we'll say Black specifically, but it's not just Black people. It's Black people, it's brown people, it's gay people,
And
um,
women.
and women are
Yeah.
being disappeared.
Mm.
Now,
Being erased.
erased from the public um, sphere. Now, what does that mean? Well, for one thing, uh, the mass firings, that's one thing.
Mm.
I saw a woman who was in what department was she in? Might have been the Veterans Department, Black woman. And she said that she noticed that of the lists of people who had been fired, everyone was a woman and Black
Mm.
and Hispanic.
And it is a deliberate thing they are doing.
Right.
This DEI hiring issue. So the assumption with DEI, which plays well in the heartland with people who just think, oh, that's the other.
Hmm.
They're not talking about me, it's the
Right.
other that a DEI hires, not realizing it's women, it's older men, it's the disabled, and so many others. And then the second assumption that rides with that is they're not really up to the job.
Right.
and they've been given it by the fairies,
right,
right? And this can't continue,
right, right.
And it's a deliberate
Right.
thing.
It's insulting, of course, and
Yeah.
it is deliberate and it's also ridiculous. I mean, I know as a Black woman, I'm of a generation where everybody's mother, if you were Black, would say to you, you have to work twice as hard to get half as far. And what they meant is not because you're twice as dumb, so you have to work twice as
Mhm.
hard, but because you have to be twice as good in order
Yeah.
to get half of the acknowledgement and the recognition. So, Black women, I don't know if you know this, but Black women are the most educated group in this
Mhm.
country, which is,
That's really interesting, isn't it?
yep, it really is. So,
Mm,
okay, so that's one is from, so hiring is a thing. Um, The thing that really got me uh, the other day was to see Arlington National Cemetery's website. Now, Arlington National Cemetery is our sort of, as cemeteries go, the gold standard, we'll call it, in
mm,
national cemeteries, and a lot of very important people, of course, are buried there. Kennedy is there, for example, et cetera. And it was, I don't know if you know, but it's not like when it was established, it was after the Civil War.
mm,
And it was not like they didn't have land elsewhere, but as a big to Robert E. Lee, they took
mm,
his backyard, and his
mhm,
backyard is Arlington National Cemetery. Okay.
mhm,
So Arlington National Cemetery, as many modern cemeteries do, has a website. And on the website are sort of the famous people buried there. And one was, I have him on my phone because I want to get his name because it's only right since they took it off. Then it be at
yes.
least. Okay. So Charles C. Rogers, 1929 to 1990, a U.S. Army Major General and a Medal of Honor recipient for his heroism during the Vietnam War. Well, not only did they remove the reference to him, they had a photograph and that little caption.
Mm.
They put his picture's not there, but they just said DEI. DEI. So here's a guy who saved lives, fought for his country, can't even be dead, but he too has to be erased.
Yes, and that's decades before DEI happened.
DEI before affirmative action, before
Uh,
all of this stuff. There was a primary school teacher, so elementary little kids, she teaches little kids, and little kid teachers like to decorate their rooms, right?
yeah.
And so she had a poster up, and it said, "Everyone is welcome here." And she was asked to take it down. She didn't take it down. She got fired. Now, what the school says is that they didn't object to the words, everyone is welcome here. It was the graphics that went along
Mm,
with it. So it was hands, different color hands with
mm,
hearts. All of them had a heart in the center.
mm,
Hands, all like handprints. And because they were different colored, no, let's not get things twisted.
mm.
Everyone is welcome here as long as their hands are all of a paler persuasion.
Yes.
So you can't, I am so glad I don't teach now because I would be fired.
Yeah, me too,
Yeah,
for the same reasons,
it
you
just,
know.
so there's that. Um, I don't know that, I don't look at what MSNBC did. I mean, blatantly got rid of about six people of color who had standard bearing programs
Yes,
that they
yes,
just got rid of.
yes. It's the whitewashing of America all over again,
Hmm.
right? As I
Yeah.
said. And the fact it's retrospective as well. So America, well, I should talk about the United States because
Yeah.
America is becoming a
America's,
laden term. But we know what we're talking about. what happens is who writes the history, and we all know there's a pattern to that that rarely acknowledges
Hmm.
people of color in any context. But it's normally a process that's done behind closed doors and in
Exactly.
the academic sphere, and most people, this is done in front of our eyes.
Right.
Like that soldier's name was there last Monday on the website, and it's not there now. It's in front of our eyes. And this is another reason in terms of history. Let's back up a little bit here. So we often talk about the big names of the great men
Hmm.
who made the country, right? Whether it was Carnegie or JP Morgan or whatever. So there's this whole thing that these guys built railroads and built empires and so on. No, they actually didn't.
No,
Who lugged the stones and who built these things, and including the railways that famously had people from everywhere, including the Chinese, who were
Chinese. That's right.
treated extremely badly.
That's right.
And so workers get written out of history too, and you're left with the great name. And so for a eugenicist like Musk and a white supremacist like both of them, there can't even be historical figures of colour
No.
is actually part of a tradition of writing out accomplishments by those people. Then it reinforces the next generation's perception. You see, they haven't really done anything. You know, they didn't actually fight and they didn't do this and that, you know, like,
But you know what's good? You brought up something that made me see a little spark of light in what you just said. Before, it was all done in the dark
yeah,
and denied. We're not like that. No, what do you mean? Okay.
yeah,
But now it can't be any more in your face. Now, there are people who don't want to see it still. As I
yeah.
said to you before we started, 47% apparently of Americans still think that Trump is A-okay.
Mm.
But the thing is, it's the rest of the world that's watching. To me, this is the glimmer of light.
It's very important.
Right,
Normally, it wouldn't be such a close gaze on this fine print, but they're
right,
not getting away with it.
right. So the fact that the world is seeing it gives me some hope because at some point, the people who are doing this are going to look as ridiculous and as cornered rat-like and as
And
vicious
as vicious
as
as
they
they
are.
are.
Yeah. And that's a good thing. I think that's a
A-
good thing. But
Absolutely.
I was going to say I'm grateful to you Australians and to the Canadians particularly, but as you do, I have people from all over the world who watch the program and who say, we know it's not you.
Yes. And that is so important for
It's
you guys.
so
And
helpful.
the other side of it too is I'm impressed by the number of Americans, particularly obviously in our viewership group and beyond, but a lot are saying in their own way, I'm American and I stand by what Canada's doing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We are.
And that's almost a first. It's very hard for Americans to step out of the driver's seat, you
Yeah.
know, of being the front row of
Yeah.
every show.
Yeah.
So that's massive too. And bless you guys for doing that.
Well, and I
Yeah.
also think that should push come to shove, which I hope it doesn't, that there will be Americans that are in the military, for example, who will say, yes, sir, and then not do what they're being asked to do in regard
This
to
is a very big question for, right,
Greenland,
let's
Canada. Yeah.
get into that because we talk about veterans a lot at the moment, but I think we need to consciously include active service men and women
Right.
Okay, because they've got to make some of the most absolutely impactful decisions of our generation coming up.
That's right.
Uh, Now, a lot of serving men and women, and that's before we get into the trans issue, but who tend to lean conservative
That's right.
by and large.
It's true.
Now, Fox has, I don't know how Fox got access to every airport and everything, but I can remember 5 years ago, 7 years ago, people saying to me, if you're in a canteen in
Oh, yeah.
Afghanistan as a serving member, you all you get was Fox 24/7, right? So there's been this massive input,
Indoctrination. Yeah.
indoctrination. So it's really, really important for serving people as well as veterans to speak up about this erasure.
I think absolutely. And I also think that, I mean, this is the downside. I think that the government's aware of that. And so one of the things that's happening is that Trump is in conversation with Proud Boys and
Mm,
neo-Nazis. And it's to sort of I think it's to bolster his forces. So for example, if we have, let's say, martial law declared, I've said to everybody black I know, stay home. Do not go out in the street if they declare martial law because we're the
yeah,
ones that they'll come for
do
first.
not.
No,
And even big protests, like
even
generally on my
protests.
channel,
Yep.
I say to people, but I made a cryptic reference to this on the last bit because Black people have to make a different set of risk assessments to
And
join.
we've done our time on those lines.
You've done it over and over and saved the Dems over and over. This is a time to sit it out for a
Yeah.
range of very obvious reasons.
Yes. But and so he's gonna, so but there may very well be, let's say, for example, National Guard troops that would be pulled out for duty
Mm,
at a time like that. There could be National Guard troops that say, I'm not participating in that. So what he's trying to
mm,
do is fortify his troops by having Proud Boys and neo-Nazis and I guess these South African white farmers that he's trying to have immigrate to the US
mm,
because they're
mm,
being
mm.
beset, apparently. Uh, I think, I'll tell you, I do think there will be, and this is not hyperbolic, revolution.
Mm.
Not yet, but I think it's coming.
I think it almost has to happen.
Yeah.
Uh, and I often think that had Kamala won, it would have been ugly in a different series of ways.
Mhm.
So at least this way, the focus, because you notice at the moment, the resentment is focused all on Musk.
Mhm.
Like Trump is
Right.
still protected by his people.
That's
It's
right.
like Doge is doing all these terrible things. Musk is doing these terrible things.
I know.
They haven't
And the
connected
power,
it with him.
they haven't connected the dots yet. No.
No. I mean, I think they're going to be on a fast learning curve
Mhm.
as the kitchen table issues come into play. But they haven't got there yet.
They haven't gotten there yet. I'll tell you, a little shove that could have moved us farther down the line sooner, in my opinion, would
Mm.
have been for Schumer to have said, well, then I'm not voting for the CR, so you do what you need to do.
It was I think, a complete travesty,
Oh God, what a
that
mistake.
vote, because by definition, he is on the record for being complicit
Exactly.
in that bill passing. Now, I think we're grown-ups here. We understand he'd have his reasons and arguments of, oh, what if, like if the government was shut down, Trump might do terrible things. Nothing is going to stop this man doing terrible things. So why ally yourself with an acceleration of this process.
Right. Now, on the one hand, so the process has not been accelerated. Okay. But on the other hand, I don't know if you know, do you know the work of Psychic Violetta?
Yes.
Oh, I love
Um,
her. She's so sweet. Well, I was watching her and she said, for every bad thing that happens, there's something good. So this is the example she gave. Her son had passed,
yeah.
and she said, I was always worried about my son. Always, always constant state of worry. I didn't know where he was
Mm,
or how he was. That's the
mm,
bad part. Then he
mm,
died. That's the really bad part. So what's the
mm,
good part? Well, that he's in an urn on her mantle. She knows where he is. He's
yeah.
safe. He's home. He's okay. He's fine. Now, that might sound weird, but it makes a lot of sense.
Hmm.
So, with this situation, I'm like, okay, Schumer did this stupid, selfish, cowardly thing. That's bad. What's the good in it? Well, the good in it is everybody saw what he did. And everybody has seen how other politicians like AOC and
Mm.
Crockett have behaved, Jasmine Crockett, and are saying, no, I'll have one of those. I'll take that.
I think so. It's actually, I think it was a turning point
Yes,
itself, even though
absolutely.
we felt it as rage and pain and frustration and disbelief on some level because they'd been saying until the 11th hour, we're going to let them do it. And so it has to lead to the reinvention of the Dems.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, when I wrote, no, I guess it was a YouTube I had done, and I said, this will be like the Tea Party back
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
2000s, the 1990s, whenever the Tea Party was around. Um, that split the Republican Party. Well, this
yep.
split the Dems. And you have to ask yourself, is the two-party system really the right way to go? I mean, look at Europe, you know, with a bunch of different parties. So people have to get along. They have to have coalition.
Make a deal, a real deal.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes, and I think there's an inheritance, there's a simplicity about the two-party
yeah,
system.
yeah.
Um, Now, using Australia as an example, but it applies to all the first world countries with two-party systems. After the Second World War, when everyone was regrouping and at least going through the motions of trying to look after the war injured and
Mhm.
the war widows, and everyone was on their best behavior for like 10 years after the Second World War, trying to, some sort of social justice things. And it used to be that there'd be think tanks. Remember that? Experts,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Experts who would get together, regardless of their political persuasions, and say the best way forward for education, energy, and defense were the main well, health. In our case, America missed that boat, but
Mm,
the other three. And there was a 20-year plan, right? So it didn't matter who got in, they'd do their things, these would do their things, but the plan was still moving forward. What we have, and Australia prospered, Canada prospered, US prospered in its own
right.
demented way, UK, the NHS, etc.,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
Now what we have everywhere is everyone is in for a 3 or 4 year term and they spend
mhm.
90% of that time ass covering and limping on to
Next
their
term.
next
Yeah,
re-election.
yeah.
And the net result of that is tearing each other apart is seen as political discourse,
Mhm.
and no one is governing, Erica.
Yeah,
No one is actually governing,
right,
and it shows.
right.
Right? So there's been 30 or 40 years of that, and now it really shows. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of, back to Canada, well, what an interesting turn of events there,
Oof.
right? I mean, Poilievre. looked like he was gonna pull it
I
out.
was going to sail in, it seemed.
Oh,
I know. And also Maple
Violetta.
MAGA was a thing.
That's right.
Maple MAGA.
Yes. It's like Violetta said, for every bad thing, there's something good. Okay, so we
Yes.
have Trump, but because of Trump and how he is with Canada, the 51st, I thought at first he was kidding, but he's not.
Always not.
I don't think
And
so.
they know it.
They know it.
And he's overreached.
Yes, he overreached.
And not only is Canada standing up and resisting for Canada, they've become the beacon.
Yes, I love it. I love it.
They've
They deserve it.
become the beacon. They are the yardstick for resistance to the epic bullying.
Yes, yes. And
It's
Poilievre would
fantastic to
look like
watch.
a, yes, it's wonderful. Poilievre will look like he's not a patriot, even though he said, oh, Canada first, Canada first. Well, it can't be Canada first and rah-rah Trump at the same time. So
No, can't do it
I
now.
no, I think it's really interesting.
And I think all the alliances, because he went and kicked sand in the face of every standing alliance in his primitive fashion, right? Now, first time round, leader of the free world, immense economy, etc., everyone went, oh, we've got to just survive these next 4 years, like, oh. This time they're going, no, that'd be a no. And they're not, and they're rapidly realigning. The EU was starting to drift and fracture, right? More individual countries were going to the right. People resented
Right,
having to pay their EU
right.
fees, and it was starting to get messy.
Yep.
Now, look
Now
at
they're
it.
like this. And you know what? I bet you that they're going to let the UK back in.
Well, we'll see if UK is brave enough. I have a particular lingering distrust of Starmer.
So tell me
I've
about
been, well, I've been saying for 3 years before he got in, when his name was first mentioned, I said he's in the wrong party. He's a
it. Mm,
closet Tory. Do not trust this man. This was just also on an intuitive level.
yeah,
Because when he was very first mentioned, I thought, oh, he looks like a Tory, so that can be useful. And
right.
he's a Labour man. But as I observed his behaviour behind the scene, I went, no, this is bad. Now, he got in. All he had to do was have a shower and turn up, right? Because
Right.
the Conservatives had been so bad. So he didn't have to win the election, he just had to be there.
Hmm.
So he got in. What was his first act, Erica?
What?
His first act as Prime Minister was to cut the subsidies for heating for people on benefits.
Oh God. What? That's not good.
Now, it's not only not good, it's weird.
It's weird. It's weird.
Okay, it's so specific. It'll save them $4.50 in the terms of the national budget. They are your regular voters because Labor are the ones who vote, and older people tend to vote more reliably, etc. So he made that his first action. Bizarre. And
Well,
of course, I was on the phone to Hogarth and everyone else I know. I said, I
yeah, yeah,
told you
yeah.
the man is a dog, right? Like, but I
Why do
didn't
you think
dream
he
it would
did
look.
that?
Why?
Yeah.
You tell me, what on earth is the benefit of that action?
Well, you
It's
know what? It
bizarre.
reminds me of John Fetterman, who was supposed to
Yeah,
be a
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Democrat.
yeah.
Now, all of a sudden,
A few years ago, I was going, thank God Fetterman's in there now. Well,
nope.
he's a great guy to have in the mix. He's horrifying.
He had that stroke. I don't know. Did Keir Starmer have a stroke? Because,
No,
okay, well then
but
let's
Keir
look into it.
Starmer has a trophy wife. Now, this is only important because he'd only been in a few weeks and there was a scandal that she was receiving expensive dresses from sponsors because she's probably a model or something,
Mhm.
whatever. And it's like the emoluments clause. She's not
Right.
supposed
Right.
to
Not
accept
supposed to
gifts of the
accept.
same thing.
Mhm.
And it became known as Frockgate, right? As a play on Watergate.
Yeah.
So when I saw that, I thought that's the problem. Now, men, as we know, tend to be at I'm not saying at the mercy of their wives, but tend to be hugely influenced by their wives. So
Mhm.
unless you're in a profoundly traditional marriage,
Right.
right, it's women who tend to keep the social connections
Right.
going, this sort of thing. That incident said a lot about her. We're not talking going and supporting a children's cancer foundation or something. It's look at me, what am I wearing? Oh, I'm wearing a $40,000 dress. No, he's Labor.
Yeah.
So that's what he's getting when he goes home.
Yeah.
Wow, wow. And that told me a lot. I am hoping, then we can move on from the UK. He's so bad that they'll have what we call a leadership spill, where the party comes in and goes, no,
You've
move
got to
on.
go. Yeah.
However, he has stood up over Ukraine. So I'm giving him a pass while this crisis is on. I thought he'd just wimp out, but
Hmm.
he actually has been quite vocal in
Right. On
support of
Ukraine. Yeah.
Ukraine. So I'll cut him some slack for a minute. But I thought that act about elderly people and heating to set the tone for your
But right. To
leadership
set right.
takes a bit of beating.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I look at what's going on here and you talk about setting the tone. We're not even 100 days in, and we've had all these firings and everything else. That certainly has set a tone, but I think we all know what that's about. I mean, I think that we know that 47 is in different people's pockets, both Musk, of course, and Russia
And Peter Thiel.
and Peter Thiel.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. So that explains that.
Well, it doesn't, it doesn't. Okay, so you used to in the old days, if you were wealthy, do some kickbacks and stuff, and it was about gaining influence. It meant that while your guy was in power and you were in roadworks, you would get the tender for that next highway, or if you were in this industry, you'd get
Right.
the. So it's always been corrupt. The problem is this doesn't actually serve business.
No, that's right.
And this is where he's a screw up
Right.
because he's incapable of strategy.
That's right.
So there's been all this talk in the last 4 weeks or something. Oh, Trump's a Russian agent. They recruited him in 1987 and he had this name and that name and thing. I don't think so. The KGB would play people, but they didn't deliberately recruit rogues and wild cannons, right? They wanted his influence, I think, which came to pass, of money laundering for the oligarchs,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
So it was a marriage made in heaven. It started with Miss World Moscow and they dazzled him, and he'd never seen such opulence,
Hmm.
like, and all
Hmm.
of that. And I think they recruited him in that sense.
Well,
But I think, go on.
I don't know. I think that there was a quid pro quo, and the quid pro quo was you help us with messaging because we want to be able to influence your politics, and we will help you with deals. We'll give you money. I mean,
Oh, exactly. Exactly. But I don't think in his Trump's head, it was this grand strategic plan.
oh, but that's
It's
the
like, look,
thing,
we'll help you get in. We'll help you with the presidency. And you can
Lena.
keep
He's
laundering our money over here.
he's a
I
savant.
don't.
In a lot of ways, he's a savant, right? I mean, nobody rises to be the president of the United States twice and in between get indicted 34 times,
Yeah.
convicted 20. So there's something that of the savant about him in terms of understanding messaging and and TV and how to do a show, but he's an idiot savant. So the idiot
Yeah,
part is, I think you're right. I don't think he is part of any grand scheme, but I think Putin is using him as part of Putin's grand scheme.
that was where I was going.
Okay,
It was Putin's grand scheme. How cheap is it? We get this guy in, we can destabilize the
that's right.
West, and it costs us nothing
That's right.
virtually.
That's right.
In fact, we make money as oligarchs while we're doing it.
That's
How
right.
perfect is the scheme?
That's
So I
right.
don't doubt the scheme. I just think there was one person steering it, not two people in
Well, it's
it.
very interesting because what it looks like from my perspective is very sort of tri or quadpartite. So you've got the Russian interest, you've got Trump's own personal interest in making money and in not going to jail. You have the red-hatted Trumpers under Bannon, and then you have the fourth arm, which is Musk and the oligarchs and Peter Thiel and all of that. So all of these are, it's like a fan. All of these are
Yeah,
part of it. The weak link, of course, is Trump. And I think what will happen is he will start to be uh, an unuseful idiot. I think he'll be
yeah. There
become,
comes a time always.
yeah, that he will become a detriment. And I think at that point, I think that the power elite, whoever that is, and I think it'll be a union. And oh, I forgot the other arm, which is the Christo nationalist.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so I think that there will be some coalescing of those figures, and I think that he will be impeached.
Mm. I think it's entirely possible. And because we're living in an accelerated time, what would have played out over years is happening in weeks or even days sometimes.
Yeah.
Now, there's also that point of view of the tech bros. Their idea is run in and break things, and then you pick up all the great deals if the economy falls over. There is that school of thought, and I believe there are those who are committed to that.
Hmm.
However, I think that's a bit naive on their part,
Hmm.
the tech boys, because what isn't being represented there in how you carve up the cake is conventional big business, as I'll call it,
That's true. That's
right?
true.
The big energy companies, the big everybody's in the conventional, the big bankers, the big this, the big that. This is staring them in the face.
Yeah.
And you cannot tell me that the conventional business tycoons who are used to ripping everyone off on every level, institutional, whether it's big pharma or whoever, it doesn't matter how awful they are, this is not working for them
Them.
to
That's
have
right.
this stock market
That's right.
crash.
And then, of course, you got to remember that there's the sans culotte, the rest of us getting ready to break down the gates of the Bastille.
Absolutely. And what I'm hoping, I'm trying to manifest, MAGA got him in, MAGA needs to get him
Get them
out.
out. That's right. Well, okay.
So I
What
think there's
happened
a
to
few angles to why that would be the best
it
scenario.
would totally be the best scenario is when people say, wait a minute, I am white like him, but that's about the only thing we have in common. I have way more in common with the black guy down the street who's also out of a job like I am. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that's part two of the social experiment. I don't think they'll get there in a
Anytime
short
soon.
line, but I think they'll get there in the end. I sort of see it in two stages. One is still selfish MAGA,
Yeah,
and I'm white, so how come this is happening to
happening to
me?
me.
Right. He said, I think we've got to go through that full
Yeah, I
cycle to
agree. I
play it,
agree. It was
right?
fine when it was
Okay.
somebody else, but yeah,
Yeah, because they still don't care,
yeah,
about things. So they've got to go through that pain. which is going to happen very fast because obviously the price of everything is not only going to go up as it usually does. I mean, things cost more than they did in 1968, Magga. Hello, things
Yeah.
move. So they're going to have to go through that and get angry enough for that. And let me share my fantasy with you.
Okay.
I woke up one morning thinking of this, and I don't know where it really came from, but it was MAGA trucks circling the White House and all these guys with guns going, bring him out,
Like
bring him out.
Mussolini, hang him upside down.
Like Mussolini, like Ceausescu,
Yeah,
like the
Ceausescu, yes.
left hand. And a helicopter. I don't even know if there's a helicopter pad. This is sort of
There
a
is.
mixture of
Yeah,
everything.
there is.
Yeah, helicopter pad, get him on the roof and get him out. And so back to what you were starting to say, sorry, I cut you off about realizing who
No,
are your
I mean,
real allies.
I think, but that will be the revolution. I think we'll all be part
Yeah.
of this revolution, and I think everything is going to fall apart and then be rebuilt. Now, here's one question that I have. It has nothing to do with that. What is today? Today is the 17th. Okay. The Ides of March was 2 days ago. And all of us who do this work, I don't know of a single person who does this work and is known,
Mm.
widely, who has not seen a little something something, if you know what I mean. Um, so
Yeah.
the Ides of March, for viewers who don't know, refers to historically speaking, the day that Julius Caesar was assassinated by his good friend Brutus, and he said, "Et tu, Brute?" And yes, Brutus stabbed him. And so, the Ides of March is always a politically interesting day because it's a day of,
It's fascinating. And because with that same story, 60 senators stabbed him.
yeah, 60 Senate. Mhm. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, he didn't do
And
it by himself. That's right. That's right.
yeah, and that's why he said, two Brutus,
Yeah, you
them,
too. All these guys and
and
you
you
too.
too, Brutus.
Right,
Okay.
right.
And they did that. It was a bit like Murder on the Orient Express, wasn't it? Where it's sort of, if everyone does it, no one can be
No one.
charged
That's
with it,
right.
sort of thing.
That's right.
And I think this is happening symbolically
Symbolically.
as we speak. It's Trump still, he needs to be adored.
Yep.
And the problem for him, there's somewhere in his 78-year-old, what I call when men have fantasy when they're 4 years old of the battleships around the bath.
Uh-huh.
And his fantasy was, tariffs, which don't make sense no
It
matter
makes
how you slice it.
no.
And because he was then is surrounded by yes people, no one actually stopped him from doing this stupidity that is the tariffs. On top of that, even if he'd done the tariffs with Canada, Canada would be upset, furious, angry, doing what they're doing. But it was this absolute nonsense about the 51st state that shifted Canadians into another realm,
Yes.
right? Because it's just so insane. And Musk said, who is a citizen of Canada, who said, oh, Canada's not even a real country. He said, did you hear that?
No. No.
Now, that was sort of in the early flush of all this nonsense, and it went under the radar, but Canadians didn't miss it. And there's now a legal push to denaturalize him, which
Well,
they
I
don't
heard that
do.
he's an
It
American.
hasn't.
I heard he's an American citizen now.
Oh,
So he went from, yeah,
he's
he settled. Right.
tripartite.
Yeah.
Born in South Africa, he has
Yep.
Canadian citizenship and he now has American
Yep.
citizenship.
Yep.
Okay. So if Canada goes ahead, and it's a serious court case. But they don't do it usually, so it's groundbreaking. Canadians in the chat can let us know more about this story,
Yes,
but there
please
is
do.
a
We have a lot of
compelling
video.
case.
Mhm.
That he was instrumental in this horror. So if any case is going to get up, it could be this one. So he could lose his Canadian citizenship. He will be so on the nose in the US that there'll be nowhere for him to run on the other side of all this to live in the US. He can't just sort of, buy a big house in Miami and live happily ever after. I think he'll be naturally expelled from the US. You know. So,
And go where?
well, he can always go back to South Africa.
I'm sure they
Now, he could
welcome
also
him.
live anywhere in Europe. He's a wealthy man. However, he's defiled and reviled
Yeah.
so many countries. He's gone global.
Yep.
And so I think he'll end up in a walled compound. It always doesn't matter if it's Switzerland or wherever it is. The point is, he won't be welcome on the other side of this in any country, as
In
I
any
see.
country. I mean, you're saying Europe. What country would take him in?
Yeah. I mean, they might legally say, okay, you can live here. I'm talking when all of this is through and out the other side. But he'll always be remembered, right? He wanted a legacy and he's got one.
Yeah.
It's not quite the one he thought.
No. 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 Should we use our cards for anything? Do you want to look at anything?
No, I'm happy chatting if you are.
Okay. No, that's fine.
Now, I had a question for you that I scribbled down to
Okay.
talk about. Um, West, what is an American?
Hmm.
Okay, and this was late night, a couple of nights ago, and I was thinking,
What is an
I've
American?
got to talk about this with Erica because it came up in the Australian context. Because
Well,
what is an Australian, right? We are a modern construction that's been plonked on top of an ancient land and an
yeah.
ancient culture. So when we say Australia, we're referring to post 1788. And yes, we have a strong cultural identity as Australians. We see ourselves as very different, certainly from the Poms, the English, and
Mhm.
certainly from Americans. But it just got me thinking. So, what are
I
your
think,
thoughts on that?
yeah, I think that all of us, to some degree, bought into a construct that essentially was built of straw. You know the story of the
Mm.
three little pigs?
Yeah.
That was straw. And so, and you're inculcated with certain straw man beliefs from when you're small.
Yeah, from
And
naught.
some of them seem bizarre to the rest of the world. For example, the fact that we pledge allegiance to the flag. A
Hmm.
lot of places are like, what is that? What are you doing?
Mm.
Every ball game, we
Mm.
sing the Spangled Banner.
Mm.
We have a certain idea of what it means to be an American and a patriot. And evidence notwithstanding, we all believe in, for example, American exceptionalism,
Mm.
that we are, uh, that city on a hill, uh, the best and the brightest,
Mm.
the bring me your tired and your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be
Mm.
free. I saw that there's a French politician. He's a little bit of a fringe guy, but he's trying to put a
Mm.
bill out to say that we need
Let's
to
get it
bring back
back.
Statue of Liberty. I mean, I can't blame him. But we bought that construct.
Yep.
And we then also have spent a lot of time ignoring evidence of our own eyes
Mm.
experience. And
Yeah.
this makes us, on the one hand, unable to talk to each other honestly about
Yes.
things, defensive when we try to do it,
Yep.
and just so wedded to our goodness and our greatness
Hmm.
that we don't see ourselves the way the world sees us. So
Yeah.
that is a very good question. What does it mean to be an American? I'll tell you, when all of this stuff first started with him winning the second time, at first I thought, well, there were people who talked about leaving, and I have friends who've left. Like they could get dual citizenship and they moved to Italy or whatever.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I'm an American. I mean, I'm here for the duration. Why would I give up my, but now it's kind of like
Mhm.
I see nothing but people leaving, and it's in my radar, it's in my line of vision.
Mm,
And everything is always in our line of vision, except that we don't pay attention. Why am I
mm,
paying attention to this? Because I'm
mm,
asking that very question. Wait a minute. Half of the people that I'm related to, well, everybody came over on a ship. Half of them involuntarily through
mm,
slavery. The
mm,
other half came over from Europe, in the great immigration thing. So they left where they were for all kinds of different reasons.
mm,
What holds me here?
mm.
Is it more than a straw construct? Because
Right now,
here's the thing, I would be happy to stay if I thought that everybody said, "Oh my God, I get it."
yeah, we blew that. Let's
Yeah,
do
yeah,
this.
because we talk about being a more perfect union, and we all love the fact that they said more perfect union, because of course the implication is that there's no such thing as perfection, but we can always strive to. We haven't even thought about trying for a more perfect union. For
Mm.
us, it's the documents, the words in the documents. Look, we put the words in the documents. That's good enough. We don't have to like actually do it.
That's right.
It's just, just look at our documents. That means
And
that
the
that's
refusal and the threatened nature of talking about history, which is why the US
right.
is in the situation it's
That's
in today,
exactly right. That's
right?
exactly right. It's our refusal, first of all, to deal with what I call our great national wound.
Yes,
No, we had
exactly.
we had Abraham Lincoln, great guy. Thank you for freeing the slaves. But Abraham Lincoln was a pragmatist. If nothing else, he was a pragmatist.
Mm,
And he said, my thing is I want to preserve the Union. If I can preserve the Union by freeing the slaves, I'll do that. If I can
mm.
preserve the Union by not freeing the slaves, I'll do that. So it wasn't like he was this great
No,
father of whatever who wanted to free us. No, no, no,
no.
no. It was to preserve the Union. And then, okay, so we had the war, whatever. He did the Emancipation Proclamation. Okay, fine. But then he said, these are his words, let's let him up easy.
Mm.
Let's let him up easy, meaning the South. Now, letting them up easy means that people are so um, amnesia, what is the word? They have amnesia about what
Yes, yeah,
happened, that they will do things like have weddings in at plantations.
yeah.
I mean, what? Like
Mm,
what? And
mm,
we just sort of they smoothed it
mm.
all over, but that then led the South believe that they had been wronged by the North, that we
Yep,
were the aggressor, right? And that's what they teach their kids. They're not
yes.
required to teach their kids anything but that.
Mm,
So, and then in the North, well, and then we had Jim Crow, which replaced
mm,
slavery.
mm.
There's never been any kind of reckoning in the way that you've all tried to do in Australia, in the way that South Africa has tried to do. There's never been even a thought of
No,
that. And anytime
no.
you bring up the issue of reparations, because
Mm,
here is what we believe, because we're built on, that's what are we built on? The dollar. It's
mm,
all about money. That is first and foremost, I think. To be an American means to be a rugged individualist who believes you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps, even if you don't have boots, even if you don't have bootstraps, you can pull yourself up, rugged individualism, and that if you can't make it, well, that's on you. That there's no need for any kind of social underpinning.
Exactly, to the extent in red states as we speak, who consume most of the government benefits because the education system's so run down, the health system, are the ones who are saying, no, make smaller government. So it's worked as an indoctrination.
Exactly. I saw,
And yeah,
no, go ahead.
well, I'll just share a quick little story with you from my time in New York back in the 70s. I was living in New York from, let's say, 1977 or something. And there were a group of us, and we went out to eat at a restaurant, which was a big deal. Normally, we had no money ever, so normally we'd be scrabbling and saving and then just having something on the side. So to go to a sit-down restaurant was it must have been someone's birthday or something. Anyway, so it wasn't hugely upmarket, just a restaurant. Anyway, I was 20 or something. And conversation went around, and I said, well, look, America's like Australia. We're a mongrel nation,
Hmm.
and our identities have been constructed in a very short period of time. And the people I was talking to, most were going, oh, no, 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 look, being American, blah, 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 blah. And then it spread, right, to the neighbouring tables. I'm saying, look, if you're not Indigenous, you were either brought here forcibly, as you just said, driven out by starvation, like the Irish, no
Right,
choice, and others making a decision to improve their lives. And this had to be brought together
right.
under an umbrella that was given this idea. No, how can you possibly say that? I said, look, give me an American surname, I said to them.
Hmm.
Oh, well, no, that's Norwegian.
Hmm.
No, that's German.
Hmm.
That's Latino. There is no such thing as an American
That's
surname.
right. And that
That
should be
has
our
to give you a
strength.
clue.
That should be our strength, and it's not.
Yes, exactly. I wasn't running it down for
Right,
being this thing,
right,
but they
right,
could not see it.
right.
They were furious with
Yep,
me,
yep. But
for
that's
pointing
that
out the
blindness.
obvious
That's, but see, this is another thing that is also American, is an unawareness of the rest of the
of the
world.
world. It's staggering the
It's
extent. I
horrible.
always have jokingly said you shouldn't think you could rule the world if you can't draw it on a map. You
Exactly. Well, did you know what Trump said the other day? He said, I think he thought it was poetic. He said, America will be woke no more. What are you talking about? It
Ah,
is his aspiration. But how
yeah.
interesting that he could say that and people wouldn't say, excuse me, what? Like
Hmm.
people would say, American, there are Americans, 47%, who say, that's great. I look forward to the day when America is woke no more.
I know. And they want their cousins and their nephews and nieces and everyone to go back in the closet,
Yep,
where they belong, because every MAGA family has gay members. They just
right,
don't know it.
right. That's right.
And they don't want to know it. La 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 la.
It's a fragility. It's a fragility that
Yeah,
is,
white
is
fragility stuff.
it's cultivated. It's a cultivated cluelessness. That's what I call it.
Yeah, that's a great term, cultivated
Cultivated
cluelessness. I
cluelessness.
love it.
I mean, I get if you're clueless, that's fine. But then if I say something or I give you a book to read or I tell you what then now you're not clueless, but it's cultivated cluelessness. And I think that certainly white people in this country are rewarded for being clueless. They are rewarded. In fact,
Oh, absolutely, because yeah,
otherwise they run the risk of being ostracized from the
yeah,
tribe. And that's the worst thing in the world.
yeah, yeah, yeah. totally. Oh my God.
But
Well,
I think instead of America being woke no more, I think that if nothing else, the economics of things is going to wake people.
that's, we've got to bless the monster on some level. Had he not been so fixated on tariffs,
Right.
this evil agenda would be rolled out, where the whole who's who closes their education department?
Well, do you know
And
what the education department does? I mean, each state is responsible for its own educational policies in each community. So it's very localized. But what the education department does is it oversees things like funding for higher education,
yeah,
scholarships, right? So now people will not be able to go to college because they won't have the money.
exactly. And that's part of their aim.
That's part of their, and it also is in charge of things like access for low income kids. So, for example, breakfast and lunch programs, they won't
No,
have.
it's exactly the same in Australia in that sense.
Yeah,
Federal funds are given to the states,
right,
though, to
right,
deliver the education.
right. That's right. That's
Right.
right.
So schools in Kentucky and stuff are 80% dependent
That's right.
on federal funding. And I know two young researchers here because I don't know, there's so much news. You might have missed the fact Australian universities were sent the memo during the week. Explain your US funding.
Yes, I saw that. I saw that. I saw that.
And as a household of academics, we're going, what? You know, the US funding is not part of our thing for running you. But there are individual research teams
Right,
who are on a grant with American researchers. And two young ones have come this week saying they've now been sent a letter, not the institution, these are researchers. You have to prove to us that you are supporting, I forget the word, but it's like supporting the Christian agenda and you're doing this. I mean, it's outrageous. What are
outrageous.
you doing to protect Christians? I think the word was, and something else, and something else. And they're going, do we ignore it? Do
This
we
is part
rip
of
it up? What do we do?
this is part of Project 2025.
Yeah, of course it
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you can tell that these are not smart people, first of all.
No. And when people aren't smart, they're threatened by those who are.
That's right.
So you get rid of, well, it's the old playbook of Stalin or anyone else. You go for the intellectuals first,
Right. Exactly.
you know.
Well,
So
speaking of the
it's the Cultural
intellectual,
Revolution in China that we're
that's right. I
actually
remember that.
looking at this scenario in the US as we sit here.
Well, I will say it's very scary to think about colleges and universities. So I know Columbia University very well. I used to be an admissions officer there, and my daughter actually graduated from Columbia. Well, this is another weird thing that's happening. Under the guise of protecting the Jewish students, which is not what's really happening,
Mm,
uh, they just took $400 million of funding away from Columbia University
mm,
and saying that because they have not protected their Jewish students. That's not true. But in return, Columbia says, well, we're going to do what we can do to get that money back and to show the government that, we are. In other words, it's all about power and control. And they're
mm,
going around to all of these universities. There's a whole list of them. There's 50 something top universities where they're going to rip funding away
mm,
in return for promises that to curb freedom of speech.
mm.
You
I
know,
know it's truly shocking. It's an assault on the whole system in every day, in every way. But again, I can't think of another first world country that's done this. We can find lots of historic examples in other places, but they were not.
China, Hungary. I mean,
Well, in the case of China and Russia, when they had their purges of intellectuals, which is just the last century, it's not
Right.
ancient, that was about controlling a feudal society in each case. I mean, the Russian peasants eventually rose up and stuff, but it was that they were feudal, as was China, right? So you had an intellectual class that served the ultras for some period of time, and then they became a threat in each of those cases. But what he is doing, because there's this piggybacking with the flat earth evangelicals,
Yeah.
as if Trump cares
He
about
doesn't care
the
about any of that.
evangelicals,
Doesn't care about any of
as
them.
if Musk cares about the evangelicals.
No,
But
they
they've
don't.
had their own agenda pushed by these guys. So this is a perverse alliance. It's not
Yes,
a natural fit.
that's right. That's right. And something's got to give. Something's going to blow up.
Something's got to give. Oh my
Well,
God.
and you talk about serfs. I mean, I when was to say America will be woke no more, or to have Musk call people, what is he has a term, it's an acronym, but it is for people who are just like in a board game or
Mm,
in
mm,
a game, there are players who just they don't serve any purpose. They're not a major player, but they're like the townsperson or the
mm.
GP or
Well, that's the disposable and interchangeable workforce that is his business model.
that's right. So if you don't educate people, so now they're not educated, they need to eat.
And they're not a threat to you.
And they're not a threat. And the other thing to watch in this country is, okay, we don't have slavery, but we really do. We have
Mm,
the school to prison pipeline.
mm.
And those prisoners, watch, they will be the ones picking the crops in the field.
I've had that feeling too. They'll be
Yeah,
going, or we're going to deport you, but if you agree to work for 3 months here, you won't be deported till I
right.
can see abuse of those populations totally.
Absolutely. And the biggest industry now is the private prison industry. So it's important to
Look, it's the
watch that.
same in Australia.
Is it?
It's privatization of prisons. Now, how do you make money from a prison? You actually can't turn a profit. What it means is a private company gets a government contract to run the prison, right? Instead of the government running the prison, which was bad enough, they taxpayers' money pays these companies like Serco and Transfell. There's a couple that dominate the world prison business. And how do they make a profit? By shortcuts in every way. So cutting down exercise time, cutting down on the quality of food, cutting down on everything. So the prison experience becomes more of a hellscape than it ever was,
Right. And
right?
if you don't want to be in that hellscape, well, for pennies on the dollar, you can go out into the field and pick strawberries.
Exactly,
Yeah,
right?
evil.
Exactly.
It's evil.
Yeah, it is evil. But look, let's hope. I can't believe the hour's already gone
I
by.
know, I know, flew.
Um, that we have to be grateful it's happening in such an accelerated fashion.
And in plain sight.
In plain sight, we are seeing it. And so there's the best chance for people to go
Exactly.
and wake up that we've had. So
Absolutely.
let's
That's
hope
true.
that.
Because everything has been undercover. The
Yeah,
fact that
professionally undercover.
yeah,
Like the Republicans have very successfully sold the Reagan-esque idea that, you're special, you're American, just, you're okay and everything. And the fact that Americans have failed to look up for all these decades and compare, well, why are we 49th in terms of the world's 41st in terms of health delivery and 49th in terms of life
because
expectancy?
but this is how we have been hypnotized. to believe
Hypnotized,
that
more than brainwashed. It is brainwashed, but it's hypnotism.
hypnotized. It's hypnotized. I mean, just the word socialized medicine. Wait, you said socialized.
Yeah,
They think communism, they think Russia, I don't know what they think, but it's ridiculous. And it,
absolutely.
yeah. Well, when people lose their, I saw this woman, was on, she, a Trump supporter. Well, I didn't think they were going to take my kids' Medicaid, she said.
Mm.
As the scales fall from people's eyes, as
Yep,
they down and start putting
yep,
two and two together, as they wake up and yes, become woke. I,
yes,
I think the powers that be better batten down the hatches because I do see both the Bastille Day coming and I also see Mussolini upside down. I really do.
yeah, totally. And I think it'll be them that'll do it. It's
They
almost like they have to because the Dems certainly aren't. And the Dems need a radical overhaul now. And I think both parties will split
Yes, I agree. I agree.
and splinter. So
Well, we will do this again, Lena.
we're so well, we've barely scratched the surface.
No, but that's okay because we have every month to do this and
I
it'll
know it's exciting to have a
yes,
plan, isn't it?
yes. And you all, if you have questions for us, if you have areas that you'd like us to look at, again, internationally, because between us, we
We
cover a lot
cover
of
a bit of
ground.
territory between us.
Yeah, yeah. And you will see us again and again and again. And Lena, thank you so much for agreeing to be my partner in this venture.
Oh, I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
Good.
Bring it on.
All right. Well, what is it? Afternoon there, late afternoon there? What time is it?
No, it's still late morning.
Late morning. Okay, but it's the next day.
We're on Tuesday.
Yes, yes, and I'm on Monday. So, goodbye from the past, and we'll do this
Goodbye from
again
the
soon.
future. We've got everything covered.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody. I'll see you soon.